What's up guys, it's Mitch here from the DIYRecordingStudio.com, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Skulptor MP573. I finally got a review ready for you guys on this great piece of gear. It's an awesome mic preamp that's become a mainstay in my studio, and I'm excited to share it with you guys today. So let's get into it. So welcome back to the channel guys. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And if you're interested in this particular piece of gear or any of the other gear that I review or build or demo on this channel, make sure you hit me up in those comment sections down below. Now, it shouldn't be news to anyone that sadly last year, Neve passed away. And if you don't know who he is, he was a legend in the audio industry, and he's known quite generally as the grandfather of modern audio recording. He founded the Neve company and many of the famous Neve products that we still use today. And when he started this first company, he actually did it in true DIY fashion, working out of his home in England. While working out of this space, he built some of the large format consoles that we know and love today. And these studio consoles would go on to shape the way records were made and mold the sound of records for decades. His engineering designs have become so synonymous with high quality recording that many Neve style clones have been developed to capture that same signature sound. And this is true even in the world of DIY. When I first went down this rabbit hole to build my own mic preamps, I definitely was coveting that Neve sound. I had recently at the time been lucky enough to be using some vintage Neve products at my job where I work as a teacher, teaching audio to students in Newcastle. And I was always amazed at how those Neve products just had that sound immediately. Whether I be using them as a DI for bass, or using famous condenser microphones like a U87 for vocals, or an SM57 on things like guitars and snare drums and other percussive instruments, I was immediately able to find those sounds and dial the sounds in that I'd heard on many famous records. And so I knew going in that I wanted to capture that for my own studio and build a preamp that had that sound. So diving through the trenches of all the audio nerd forums that we know and love, I spent many procrastinatory hours in bed, on the toilet, wherever I could escape for a few minutes to do some research to try and find whose version of a Neve preamp in the DIY format was going to best suit my needs. There were a surprising amount of options for a Neve 1073 style preamp, and many debates online as to which product was the most genuine, cost-effective, or usable within that 500 series format. With all of these things being important to me, I went with Skulptor. The Skulptor MP573 seemed to cover all the bases. It had genuine Carnhill input and output transformers. It had a high Z instrument input on the front of the 500 series panel. It had front panel switches for polarity, phantom power, and impedance. And most importantly, it had really great documentation for the build process that I was about to embark on. And one of these preamps came in at roughly $450 to $500 Australian dollars at the time. And at the time of this video now, a Neve preamp in Australia will cost anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 depending on which one you're looking to buy. So for $450 to be able to build a Neve style preamp and only have the cost of your own labor added to that, this is kind of a no-brainer for me. Now, I've already posted up a whole build video series on the Skulptor MP573, but if you've missed that, I'll post a link right up here. But needless to say, the build was quite easy as long as you have some soldering experience, and it was well documented, and the build was successful for me. Now, the most important thing is, how does it sound? To be honest, it sounds like a Neve 1073. As I said before, I've been lucky enough to use Neve 1073s in the past, and this MP573 definitely has that signature Neve 1073 sound. It has that characteristic low frequency weight with nice crisp high frequencies as well, and it lends itself to any mic that I pair with it. But I was most surprised how it worked when paired with something like a simple SM57. Everyone has heard someone say that you can use a 57 to record anything. But what is often left out of the conversation when high profile engineers talk about using a 57 is what preamp they have actually paired that microphone with. What actually might be a much truer statement with the 57 is that a 57 can be used to record almost anything when paired with a great preamp. Because what a lot of people don't understand is that it's the interrelationship between the microphone and the microphone preamp, and how that microphone signal is actually amplified at the beginning stages of capturing that audio signal, that is probably the most important part of audio signal capture. The MP573 also has enough gain for low output microphones like the SM7B, for instance, and my RM5 ribbon microphones. And that impedance switch that I mentioned earlier can give those microphones a bit of extra oomph if necessary. And I've actually learned recently that part of this matching a preamp to the right microphone has to do with this impedance loading and impedance matching. And if you switch a 1073 preamp down to that 300 ohm setting on dynamic microphones like the SM57, the SM7B, ribbon microphones and the like, you can actually add an extra low end weight to those microphones, which can be amazing on all kinds of sound sources, things like drums and bass guitar and anything where you need that extra low end energy. The 1073 preamp, like the MP573, can really supply that. So I'm super glad that they included this in the build. The DI on the MP573 is also outstanding. Instantly running my bass guitar through this DI, I could hear bass tones that I'd struggled to replicate using the DI inputs on my regular interfaces. The bass guitar sounded richer, fuller, more polished, and closer to already being mixed. After playing around pulling some bass guitar signals through this DI and hearing how immediately amazing it sounded, I thought of something crazy, and that was to actually plug in my Telecaster and see how that sounded as well. Now, I've never ever honestly heard a DI'd guitar signal that I liked. It always sounds too twangy. It never has the right tonality to it. It just sounds like a horrible guitar sound and something that's generally unusable. But there are instances where I've heard clean guitar tones presumably caught through a DI that sounded great. Some of the classic guitar sounds on recordings by artists such as Nile Rodgers, Prince, and even Queen, where they had these clean tones, and it's kind of a bit of a secret on how they captured those clean tones. And particularly with Nile Rodgers, I found out recently that what he actually did to capture his classic funk guitar sounds was run his guitar straight into a Neve 1073 DI preamp, which I think is crazy, because I'm sure you've all had this before where you've captured a clean DI sound for an electric guitar and it just doesn't sound that great. But trust me when I say this to you, this sounds pretty damn good as a clean tone. When playing into the preamp, I could really feel that saturation and that push you get when driving into a real guitar amp. And it just, you could feel the compression happening as you went harder on the guitar. And maybe that's the secret. When you've got actual transformers in a mic preamp, those transformers help saturate that signal the same way that they do when using a regular guitar amp and you're running through all your tubes and the transformers in those. On top of that, maybe that's what singers and other artists feel like too when they're singing into one of these mic preamps. Maybe artists feel that sort of compression actually starting to happen when singing into something like a Neve 1073, so it feels more natural and you can get a better performance potentially because of that. Personally, I think I have to do a bit more research on this now, but it's kind of just an incredible thing to think about, that a mic preamp can actually offer this kind of saturation and subtle compression and added harmonics just because of some transformers and some other components in the circuit. But I digress. The MP573 is a brilliant piece of equipment. It faithfully recreates that Neve sound using actual Carnhill transformers on the input and output stage. And I'm glad I actually bought 2 of them to build at the time because they get used all the time on stereo sources as well. Jean-Pierre from Sound Sculptor has done an amazing job on these kits. Not only are they full of great components, but the instructions are amazingly detailed and reasonable to build, providing you know how to solder just at a basic level. And if you don't know how to solder, you can actually buy these preamps pre-built from Jean-Pierre and the people at Sound Sculptor. It might cost you a little bit extra to have them pre-built, but it's still a significant saving on an original AMS Neve or any of those other Neve products that are out on the market. Either way, if you build it yourself or not, the end result is a mic preamp that is faithful to the original Rupert Neve design, the quality of sound that it delivered, and a workhorse mic preamp that you'll have in your studio for a long time. If you want to hear more examples of the MP573 mic preamp from Sound Sculptor, I'll put a link down below that'll send you to my website and you can have a listen to the sound samples there. And if you've got any further questions about this mic preamp or anything I discuss on this channel, please hit me up in those comment sections down below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I'm Mitch from the DIYRecordingstudio.com, and I'll catch you soon.